Hey, hopefully this works. All right, here we go. When I became homeless, it was 1988. When I became housed this time around, it was 2019. I had spent a total of 25 years on the street. It happened kind of fast. This was because of my high prioritization score. My caseworker at the shelter told me it was 36, and that anywhere between 8 and 12 was considered to be at risk. The conversation happened in December of 2017 upon my entrance to a shelter. It was my fourth stay at the same place in the first 17 years of this century. The shelter itself was a very nice one. Union Station Foundation in Pasadena, California. This place literally kept me alive when I was still homeless because they feed the public twice a day. You can also access showers, telephones, services, clothing, and case management that link doctors, psychiatrists, therapists, possible jobs, or one could schedule a ride to and from certain types of appointments. Anyway, the place had me kind of spoiled. They handled a lot of my daily business through the years, and when I became a resident, there was more benefits such as dinners and access to computers and laundry as well. This is also a shelter where residents may stay on their bunks all day if they so chose. It took a little over 9 months for me to receive my housing choice voucher. I remember the day I went to the housing authority to pick it up. Congratulations, Mr. Christian, and a smile, and I was out the door to finally get my own place. I remember the elation as the gravity of this experience began to take shape. The elation I felt quickly became discouragement and frustration as I called one landlord after another, attempting to find an apartment. I received my HCV on 9/13/2018. It took me 3.5 months of calling places almost nonstop. The newest, most hated phrase being, "We don't take Section 8." I cannot tell you how many times I heard that phrase, but I can tell you that 100% of the people I spoke with denied me based on that phrase. I placed over 200 prospective calls, only to hear this excuse. Many were apologetic. There was nothing they could do, and simply policy, they would say. Simply bullshit, I would think, and move on to the next one. To say that I was frustrated is the proverbial tip of the iceberg. Sometimes it was all I could do. Just sometimes it was all just too much for me, and I would take a day or two off from calling. The very act of calling landlords inquiring about availability was reminiscent of a job that I had with the Harrisburg Housing Authority. My job was to cold call landlords to see apartments, while at the same time, a black man would also cold call these same places to check for racial inequity. I didn't like calling so many landlords back then either. Anyway, okay, so I'm at the Union Station Adult Center, and it's been a few days since I made any calls. And so I get up out of bed and I make my bed and I get on my stuff. I get my stuff ready to go and I get my bicycle and I go for a ride. I take it down to the fountain that I always go and meditate at. Anyway. The first call I made, I asked if they accepted Section 8, and the lady said yes. I almost dropped my phone. I asked the woman on the other end just to make sure. I made an appointment to talk to the landlord and view an apartment. Now I had something to be happy about. Finally, after all this time, I was going to have my own place again. After over 200 calls, after an extension on my original voucher, and after being told no on Section 8 voucher so many times, finally someone said yes. My life was about to change. I was going to have to move. This was a drawback, that I would have to move away from my friends, away from my support system, and to a city I'd never been to ever. But no matter that, I was going to be housed. I went and met with the landlord and signed this lease. She handed me the keys and left. I stood motionless in an otherwise empty apartment. The only things were me and my clothes, some toiletries, some food, and my lease on the countertop. I felt like I should have been happy, but it wouldn't come. It occurred to me that it was about lunchtime, so I sat down by myself on the floor and ate. lonely feeling eating alone. I had been spoiled by the shelter by having companions at every meal. Now, as I ate, I began to feel as if I made a mistake by moving to a place that I had no friends, no support, and no idea where the grocery store was. I began with the self talk. Nothing big at first, just every now and then I'd mutter something to myself, something like, I hate doing dishes, or wow, I'm stupid. My voice sounding small in the empty apartment. This is how I began my experience with being housed, and from there it only got worse. By the end of the month, I had some holes in the walls, and I had broken my phone and my television. I wasn't particularly outgoing when I was homeless. This trait carried over when I became housed, to where people would say hi to me and I would say nothing. This is basically just my own fear and lack of understanding. But to the people I ignore, I'm probably an asshole. Um, my self talk had evolved into full blown rants, during which I'm either blaming God about the state of the world, yelling at the top of my lungs about Trump and Biden, explaining things to myself, or sometimes telling myself a joke, or otherwise saying something funny and then laughing about it. I was into judging other people and the situations I saw them in. I noticed that I was always angry, and I should have been, because the thoughts influence the feeling, which then team up with the thoughts. Wait, the thoughts influence the feelings, which then the thoughts team up with the feelings to influence the behavior, which influence the emotions, which influence the thoughts, which influence the feelings, which influences the behavior, which influences the emotions, which influences the thoughts. You get it. So I had to all of this going on in my first 3 months, and since I was alone with a tendency to isolate, I was headed into a dark, lonely hall, with my only company being the me that sits in my head, kicked back with his feet up, telling me all about everything, everywhere, and everyone, laughing at me when I make a mistake, clowning me until I finally say, "Shut the fuck up." His only job is telling me about what is and what isn't, and fucking with me when I fuck up, which is a lot. I make a lot of mistakes. And this is what life looked like for me. I became miserable while in my first year here. Slowly, my thoughts would shift, and I would think about killing myself again. You see, I've always been this way. Always angry, always struggling against my thoughts, always against myself, frustrated, lonely, suicidal, homicidal. It's sort of like I'm mentally torturing myself. And I don't want to, but I don't have the power to stop. Because that guy is there ready to judge something or talk shit to me, sometimes telling myself things that go against reality. And then it'd be my choice to whether or not I'm going to believe that. This was supposed to be my happy time, and instead I was going crazy. My eating habits. My eating habits were either to pig out on cereal or eat nothing. This led to complications with my digestive system, which ultimately brought on a bout with ulcerative colitis, which I kept unchecked until it was obvious that I required medical attention. And I would often begin to conjure up a scenario in my mind where people would break into my apartment to kill me, which by all logical assumptions would please any suicidal individual. But for me, it only led to a number of sleepless nights spent alone, hating myself, my apartment, this city, and the people in it. Now flash to every odd weekend. This is sorry. This is when I get my visits from my two youngest children. So here I am, trying to make believe nothing's wrong while going through everything else that's described. As you can imagine, the younger generation of mine picked up on something being very wrong with that. And once their mom was informed of my condition, she called me and told me that she can't let the kids come see me unless I get help for these issues. She understood that my mental condition wasn't my fault, and I understood her as well. I have been in touch with one of the staff at the shelter, and he asked if I would be interested in taking a class, a writing class. Seeing as how I like to write, I accepted. The next day, I received an email from Anne English, and after a Zoom meeting with her, I was enrolled in the Speak Up Advocacy Program. This is after 18 months of being housed. Excuse me. When I started the class, I didn't know what to expect. One thing I noticed was that I had a lot to say, but I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to say it, but I did follow directions, and the things I wanted to say for so long, I couldn't. I couldn't tell the world, fuck you, even if it was how I felt. But I managed to get some things down on paper. Hard. I didn't know it was going to be this hard. I managed to get some things down on paper, and when I did, somehow I began to heal. The voice inside my head would quiet down or go silent for brief periods of time. This gave me time to think about what I really would like to do with myself. Right about this time was when I was having my intestinal issues with the colitis. I ended up making an appointment and keeping it. I went to the appointment, and the doc gave me a prescription which cleared up my guts. When I was about 3 months into the class, I began to see the therapy that I was getting from my story being written down and processed by me. I'd never done that. I was never able to process my life. My mind never allowed for it. I was always just too angry to look at the facts. I was always focused on the anger or the cause of it, because I was able to process the hurt in my past. But I was able to process the hurt in my past. Not all of it, but enough to where I could function without putting holes in the wall. Following the experience I gained from the doctor's office, I called a place called Heritage Clinic and began to receive therapy and place myself under a doctor's care. The doctor was and is attentive and inclusive, and for the first time ever, I received a proper diagnosis and the correct prescription. These prescriptions help me control my thoughts, feelings, and actions, which leads to a higher self-esteem and gives me more focus on what I want to actually do. I graduated Speak Up in September of last year, and since then my life has been a blur of activity. To be fair, I've been rather immersed in this work, besides being a participating member of the Tenant Knowledge Exchange. I also serve on 2 lived experience advisory panels, one for Union Station and the other for HUD. I've taken part in research studies, focus groups, and webinars, all related to the development of enough affordable housing for those of us who need it, and the legislature surrounding the transfer of systems into La Casa. I also currently sit on a steering committee for the Just Home Project, which is a permanent supportive housing for people with high visibility in the criminal justice system. These people are often released into homelessness, and this housing is supposed to have them released into the housing in order to try to reduce or stop altogether the return of them into incarceration. Um, the project is, oh yeah, okay. I would like to say that I'm all better now, but I'm not. Sometimes it's all I can do to stay the way I am now. I forget to take my meds sometimes, which returns me to my original form until I figure out it's been a few days. I still struggle with addiction, and I still tend to stay off to the side or out of sight. I still on occasion mutter stuff to myself. It's getting better though. Sometimes I even congratulate myself now, because I am the only one who knows what I accomplish. This part of me may never change. I might always isolate, and that's okay. I can accept myself this way, and that's really what matters to me. That I am okay with myself in my apartment in this city I've lived in for almost 4 years now. Since that is the case, I thought I would write this account of my experience with being housed in an effort to show that there is a need for more permanent supportive housing, and more importantly, to take a risk and let others know the challenges that I have had while trying to adjust to being housed. Being housed was not the answer for me. Being housed is just a step in the right direction of what my goals should be. My name is John Christian. I'm a CSH Speak Up advocate. And I appreciate you letting me share. Thank you.